Every year, when the NFL announces its schedule, there is an explosion of speculation of how it impacts your team's performance, more so this year with a new 17-game schedule. Earlier today, former Packer GM and Hall of Famer Ron Wolf had this to say.
Back in the day, which I'm part of, back in the day, you had 20 games. And you played 6 preseason games. And you had various cut down times. So from that standpoint, that never really changed, if I'm being clear there. You had the games. You just, 6 of them didn't count. But they did count from the standpoint of who's going to make your team and who's not going to make your team. And I think that is going to be the interesting part now. When you only have 3 games to try to get your youngsters ready to play, how you're going to approach that, how you're going to do that.
Today, the mission goes live with not only one of the best quarterbacks to have ever played in a game, but also one of the best national broadcasters who just happens to be Hall of Famer Dan Fouts. No one better to tell our live audience the schedule's impacts from a TV broadcaster and a former quarterback's perspective that no one else has. This is coming up next on the 2021 NFL Schedule Special, live from the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
This is a presentation of the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning into our 2 live episodes of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's 2021 NFL Schedule Release Special. Our first hour, we had the golden opportunity of catching up with former Green Bay Packers Ron Wolf to talk about the inner workings of how a schedule surrounds the organization and how he built his schedule to compete. But tonight, for an hour, we get a chance to catch up with the legend, San Diego Chargers, former quarterback legend, Mr. Dan Fouts from the class of 1993. Dan, welcome to the mission, sir.
Great to be with you, Jameer.
Dan, I am super excited because tonight we get a chance to look at this NFL schedule, and we're going to dive in and we're going to talk about the LA Chargers. I'm on the phone with I'm on the line with a San Diego Chargers, so excuse me, I may mess that up, but we're going to get a chance to dive in and hear from a legend, a quarterback, of how you look at that schedule and how you would break that schedule down. But then on the other end, not only were you a legend on the field, but then stepping into the booth as a national broadcaster, we're going to get a chance to hear from your perspective of how you looked at that schedule and you broke it down. And we're going to get a chance to hear from your top 5 stadiums that you love to play at and where you love to call games at. So without further ado, let's jump into it. We got so much to talk about, but the schedule was released last night, as we all know, and it's a 17-game schedule. When you first heard that, what came to your mind?
Cold, really cold. The season won't end until the second Sunday in January. January 9th is the final game. So there's going to be a lot of great television viewing because people love to watch games that are played in the snow or in the rain or inclement weather. But as a player, one word comes out, and that's cold, Jameer.
Now, Dan, looking at that schedule when you were a former player, what were some of the things that you and your teammate and the members of your offense would do when you got that schedule? How did you guys break it down?
Well, we all wanted to see if we were going to be on Monday Night Football because that's all we had back in the day. We didn't have Thursday night or Sunday night. Monday night was it. And so we would look for that first, obviously. And then we would see, normally in a 16-game season that we played, and because we're playing in San Diego, every year, out of our first 8 games, and we didn't have buys back then, we played 8 games, 5 of them would be on the road. And so you'd look at that and say, well, that's going to be kind of tough. But then at the second half of the season, you're looking at it, and it's 5 games at home and 3 on the road, which is a tremendous benefit, especially late in the season. Obviously, the weather in San Diego is always going to be perfect whether it's September or December. And we always thought that was our huge advantage for us.
Did you find looking at that bye was a challenge for you guys? Because if you were having some early onset challenges within the game, within the team, you were looking for that break. But what was your take on that bye?
Well, we didn't have one. That's my take on it. We played every weekend for 16 straight. And, even going back farther than that, Jameer, you're going to have to go back in the black and white film studio to see some of these games, because when I started in 1973, we played 6 preseason games, 6 of them, and 14 regular season without a break. So the players today, with the bye and with the only 3 preseason games now, although they do have 17 regular season games, it's just a little bit different.
Now, how did you deal with, as a former player, knowing that if you were going to this said town, that you were going to have an outrageous ticket request of family and friends wanting to come to the game?
That didn't happen all that often, because my hometown is San Francisco, and we played the 49ers in San Francisco only one time in my 15-year career. Now, across the bay, we played the Raiders every year, but none of my family ever wanted to go to a Raider game.
And those are some battles that you guys had. Excuse me, I'm joking, but there was a lot of friction going on in San Diego Chargers and the LA Raiders.
Well, the Oakland Raiders at the time, Jameer, I hate to keep bringing you up to date, but they're in Las Vegas now. Okay.
Yes, they are. They're in Las Vegas. I'm talking as if you and I are in San Diego, Kellen Winslow Sr. You guys are picking him off the field. That's where my mind's at.
I like where your mind's at, buddy. I really do. But, the thing about the Raiders and the Chargers, and you also jump in with the Chiefs and the Denver Broncos, those are original AFL teams. The Chiefs started in Dallas as the Dallas Texans, but the Broncos, Raiders, and Chargers, and the Chargers started in Los Angeles. But they all started together in the AFL. And so that rivalry, all 4 of those teams, the rivalry is very, very tough. And one that you really enjoyed, because you look forward to it every year, because you knew if you didn't win that first one, you get another shot at them later in the season.
Now, from that inner competitor that you are, who were those teams, or who was those players that you would kind of circle? It was almost like Rocky would circle a picture of Dragoff, like you knew you were going to battle against this defense and this team all day.
Well, there's 2 positions you always look for. Number 1 is the blindside rusher. And a guy like Lawrence Taylor was on your mind, or Fred Dean when he was with the 49ers, or Leroy Selman with the Buccaneers. And then you look, for me, I'm looking at the great cornerbacks. And, you throw in Mel Blount, and you throw in Mike Haynes and Lester Hayes and Louis Wright. It seemed like every team we played had a great pass rusher coming on your blind side and a great corner that could shut down your wide receivers.
Just taking a step out of the player's perspective for a minute, how do you think how challenging is it going to be for these GMs and scouts and player personnel directors to really now build their teams surrounding this 17-game season?
Well, and that's really going to be interesting to follow, because the factor you can't plan for, or it's very difficult to plan for, are injuries. You have a bye week in there, and also teams that have that Thursday night game get a mini bye after the game of 10 days. But on the front end of that, they only have 4 days to prepare from the Sunday to the Thursday. So all these factors now with the 17-game season is, as you said, Jameer, a real challenge for the scouting department, for the coaching system, the coaching staff, and of course, the general manager.
And for you, when you said before, I'm just listening to this, you played a 6-game preseason schedule. And bear in mind, guys, that who are listening, 2-a-days were real when you guys played. It wasn't third speed. You guys were going full speed every day in practice.
Full pads. Sometimes a walkthrough in the evening. So sometimes it was 3, and it was 7 days a week. And you'd play a game on a Saturday, and on Sunday you'd be back in pads for that morning session and that afternoon session. But the other thing about the preseason back then, I hate to sound like such an old fart, but I guess I am. We traveled for these preseason games. These preseason games weren't all in San Diego. I mean, we played a game in Tokyo one year, 1976. We played in Honolulu. We played in New England, in Oklahoma. We played all across the country. But that's the way it was back then.
Now, you being the starting signal caller, nowadays you see that, the starters will only play, say, a series the first game, and they don't really get a full workout, full half until the third preseason game. And then the fourth preseason game, they don't even suit up. How was that for you guys?
Well, I had a pretty good deal with Don Coryell. He would tell me before the game, he'd say, and he would just talk to me alone. He'd say, if you score, you're out. Okay. And so I would get in that huddle, that first drive, and I'd tell the guys in the huddle, all the starters, I'd say, if we score, we're out. Knowing that that wasn't true. I was going to be out. They were still going to have to play.
That's great. That's really good. Now, and with this being said, I know this is just the first year this is happening, but do you suspect that as we go on and see how this schedule works throughout the years, do you see the Hall of Fame game being in jeopardy?
No, I don't think so. I think the Hall of Fame game is something that is very important, not only to the Hall of Fame and to the people of Canton, Ohio, but it's important for the legacy of the game because it gives the fans that sell out that stadium, Thomas Benson Stadium there in Canton, every year. And this year is going to be really special because it's the Steelers and the Cowboys, and both of those organizations are inducting a number of players. I played in the 1980 Hall of Fame game against the Green Bay Packers. Now, again, you're going to have to go back in the annals to look up this one. 0-0 tie. Game was suspended early in the fourth quarter because of lightning. And so we traveled all that way to play in the Hall of Fame game. But it was great because we got to tour the hall and really get a sense of what the history of the Pro Football Hall of Fame is all about.
About to say Northeast Ohio, first week of August. Yeah, you're going to get that kind of weather here. Now, the perspective of a broadcaster, when that schedule came out and you and your team and the networks, how did you look at it from that perspective?
Well, you only get your 3 games at a time as a broadcast team. You don't get your full schedule. You finish a game and then they add another game. So you're looking at those first 3 weeks, wondering where you're going to be, and then you just get on the treadmill and go. And so obviously we don't have any say. We're excited to be working in the industry. And, I was lucky to work with some great announcers. And the last 10 years I was with Ian Eagle, and we had just such a great time on the road, going from city to city and game to game.
That's amazing. What was your process? We know you're in the classroom studying so hard and you're studying against that defense and you're preparing your offense for Sunday. But when you took the step off the field and went into the booth, what was that process like of your preparation?
Well, it was actually kind of fun because I could talk to both teams' coaches on the phone, the assistant coaches. Usually I'd talk to the coordinators, get a sense of who's going to play and what type of things that they're looking to do in the ball game. And then when you get on site, you get to talk with a handful of players and the head coach. And it's always interesting to compare what the coordinators say to what the head coach says, because sometimes they're not always the same for obvious reasons. But during the week, you watch every game, obviously. You spend a lot of time looking up notes and background information. And the great thing about the job is that you get to put it all together live on TV. There's no holding back. You should hold back sometimes, but there's no bringing back what you say. Once it's out there, it's gone, and you can't replay it. So that's a challenge, obviously, but that's what also makes it special.
Now, Dan, I have to ask you, you said you were on the phone with a few coordinators. Did anybody ever ask you for a little advice as far as like, hey, Dan, what did you do in this offense? What did you do in that offense? Did you ever, I know you were there for broadcast purposes, but did they ever say, hey, listen, man, I'm having trouble against this defense. Help me out?
Well, there's a couple of teams that would use the same type of system, the Air Coryell system. But my response to them was always, well, Coryell always just told me, look deep first and work your way back to the line of scrimmage. And that was our philosophy in the passing game, because you never wanted to miss an opportunity to score on a big play. So that was his philosophy, and one I kind of dug to.
And before we go to this break, I got to ask you, which offense did you prefer that fit your styles from Bill Walsh to Dan Coryell?
Well, actually, it was a combination, because I had Bill Walsh in 1976 with the West Coast style of offense, which is basically a horizontal offense. And then when Don came, he saw the things that we liked and that I liked. And I had Charlie Joyner, who had worked with Bill Walsh in Cincinnati before that. And so we took a lot of the Walsh concepts, the weak side passing game, and some of the short horizontal stuff, and put it together with Don Coryell's bombs away offense. And I had the perfect system.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, guys, we're off and running. We're all virtual experts. Please put your questions in the comment box below for Dan Fouts. And when we come back, we're going to dive into, that's right, the LA Chargers 2021 NFL schedule right after this break. Stop by the Pro Football Hall of Fame store, just like Hall of Famers, for exclusive Hall of Fame gear. Make your friends and family Hall of Famers. With all 32 teams in the store, there's something for everyone. Open 7 days a week and no admission to come and shop. Stop in today. Or visit us online at profootballhof.com. Welcome back, guys. I'm Jameer Howerton, joined by Pro Football Hall of Famer Dan Fouts, and we're now about to break down the Los Angeles Chargers 2021 NFL schedule. Dan, thank you so much for taking time out. When you look at this schedule, what jumps out to you right away?
Well, we talked about earlier about primetime games, and this is really unique. The Chargers have 3 primetime games. They have a Monday night game against the Raiders, which is the 4th game of the season. And then you have a Sunday night game against the Steelers, the 11th game of the season. And then a Thursday night game against the Chiefs, the 15th game of the season. The unique thing about that, Jameer, all 3 of those games are at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. So you look at that and you go, it's tough to play a Thursday night game if you have to travel. The Chargers don't have to travel. So, and then they get the Chiefs at the end of the year, when hopefully the AFC West is up for grabs and you're playing them in front of your home fans on a big Sunday night. So I think it's very favorable there. Then the next thing I would look at is at the end of the schedule. Again, we talked about cold weather in January. But if you look at the Chargers' end of schedule, they will not play a cold weather game in their last 5 games. They'll be home to the New York Giants. They'll be home to the Chiefs on that Thursday night. Then they go to Houston, which has a dome. Then they play Denver at home. And then they go to Las Vegas to play the Raiders. That's a huge advantage for any team, especially at the end of the year. You look at that schedule and you see Denver, Kansas City, and the Raiders, all AFC West teams in the last 4 games. So that is shapes up pretty well for the Chargers at the end of the year.
And we look at the bye week, that comes week 7. Like, it seems like it's a really good balance right in the middle. Your thoughts on the bye?
Well, you never know about the bye, when to have it. And of course, you have no choice. It really depends on the health of the team as to when it's most effective. Not ever having had the bye, I really don't know. I know that some teams complain, we had it too early and they lost, and they had it too late and they lost. So you're not going to make everybody happy with when the bye is, but it comes back to the health of your team at the time. Do you need it or do you not need it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the bottom half of that schedule, because the only people that I see having any challenge is the New York Giants, where they have to make a West Coast trip to LA. So it's going to be pretty much tough on them. But just your overall thoughts of the young Justin Herbert coming back for his second season. What are your thoughts on him as he looks at this schedule? It seems to be pretty well balanced as a fan's perspective.
Yeah, I think the challenge for Justin obviously is to, live up to the greatness that he was last year. The challenge, as far as football is concerned, is going to be in learning another new system. Yeah. New head coach, Brandon Staley. But when Justin was at the University of Oregon, he had a couple of coaching changes there where he had to learn new systems. And it didn't seem to affect him or deter him at all. You got to remember, this kid is brilliant. Off the field, 4-point student at the university. His last year, he basically graduated early and just hung around to play football and help other student athletes. He was a tutor at times. So, math major, all those things that I wasn't, he is.
When you look at these divisional rivalry games, just, your fondest memories, I know they have to deal with it now in 2021, but when you looked at that from your perspective of when your schedule came out, the juices, the excitement, knowing the fans were going to go head up, what's your take on that?
Well, it seemed like every week there was opportunity to have a good one, right? But also, tremendous competition from your opponent. Whenever you played a division team, it was always big. And fans from the other cities obviously loved to come to San Diego because it was so beautiful and the weather's always so great. So it would always be a good number of fans from other teams. So that was always a challenge too, to shut them up a little bit. But playing in front of San Diego fans was great, and regardless of who we played, because they were so happy that Don Coryell was our head coach and that we had such a exciting team to watch.
Yeah, just after talking to you early on in our early segment, it just seems like you didn't really have to deal with a lot of quick turnaround games. It was pretty much a steady schedule.
Yeah, I think we played a couple of Thursday night games back when the league was just experimenting basically with those games. And they were difficult. There's no question. And that's, you asked me about the challenge of the general managers and the coaches. That game in the middle of the week when, if you play on the road before that, say you're San Diego, you're playing in Minnesota. Well, after that game Sunday, you got to fly back to San Diego and not get there until very late. And then the next morning's Monday, and you got to come in for treatment and everything. You're not even thinking about playing a game. And then you got Tuesday and Wednesday to try to get something together. So, and if you're traveling, we once played a Thursday night game in Miami where we practiced on Wednesday morning, got on a plane, flew to Miami. And in those days, we didn't have planes big enough to make it all the way nonstop. So we stopped in Oklahoma City. It broke a windshield on landing. And so now we're in Oklahoma City for 8 hours waiting for a new windshield from who knows where. So we get into Miami Thursday morning. Remember, the game's Thursday night at 9:00. And we get into Miami at 4 a.m. And then played it wasn't a playoff game, but it was an overtime game where we beat the Dolphins. We got back to San Diego, I think, on the next Wednesday or something.
Wow. What was one of those years, Dan, if you can recall, that when you looked at your schedule and you guys were like, wow, this is going to be pretty challenging, but not only did you get through it, but you guys dominated?
Well, we didn't dominate a whole lot on the road. I mean, it's difficult, obviously, traveling so far, but it seemed like if we had the better team, regardless of who our opponent was, regardless of where we were playing, we were going to beat them. But, playing, back east after traveling for, whenever we crossed the Mississippi River, we had to stop to refuel. So you got to figure that into the normal 5-hour flight usually became an 8-hour flight.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Dan, on display here, courtesy of our curator, Jason Akins, we have your game worn jersey from the 1979 season where where you broke the single season passing yards record for 4,082 passing yards. Talk about that season and what was so special about that 79 season.
Well, I'm glad to see you stole my jersey, Jameer, and you put it in your man cave there. But I need it back now. I really do.
This is a really nice man cave, the Pro Football Hall of Fame, by the way.
Yeah, that was a special season because it was Don Coryell's first full season as our head coach. And we went 12-4 and we won a lot of games and had a lot of fun doing it. The game that I broke Joe Namath's record, which made it really special because it was Joe Namath. I can't deny that. I was such a huge fan of Joe's and still am. But it was on a touchdown pass to Charlie Joyner that beat the Denver Broncos. So, and that won the AFC West division for us. So it really was special, obviously number one to top Joe and then to have Charlie catch a touchdown and to beat the Broncos and win the AFC West.
Awesome. And we have here your class ball, the class of 1993 ball on display. I have to put on the white gloves. You don't want to touch this because, the curator told me I don't have my white gloves on. He was going to get after me. But
you look good in white gloves.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But if you could just talk about that, that's a special ball right there.
You look like a magician. Now, the class, I'm so proud of the class. Chuck Knoll, Walter Payton, Bill Walsh, and Larry Little. In fact, outside of the charter class of the Hall of Fame, which is just an unbelievable class, obviously, our class was really highly rated and ranked in the first 50 years of the Hall of Fame. And every year, unfortunately, Chuck and Bill and Walter have passed on, but Larry and I come back every year, and it's just so great to have such a great classmate and to be a part of the 1993 class.
I had to ask you because there's something about sweetness that's near and dear to my heart. But what was it like knowing that you were going to go in with the great Walter Payton? It
was pretty cool because at the time he was the all-time leading rusher and just such a unique player. Yeah, I remember we played the Chicago Bears on a Monday night in San Diego. I believe it was in 1978, and Coryell was so afraid of Walter Payton. He would say, this guy, he hits you as hard as you're going to hit him, and one guy can't tackle him. We got to get a bunch of guys around him. We got to be like a swarm of bees. And so, a couple of us started buzzing, in the locker rooms. And he says, "That's right, guys, go get them. Swarm like bees and get Walter Payton."
Wow, that's amazing. Well, we're rolling here. We're going to check and see our comments to see who's tuning in. And after this quick break, when we come back, we're going to dive in and have some fun. Dan's going to share with us his top 5 stadiums where he loved to play and his top 5 stadiums that he enjoyed calling the games. All that and more coming up right after this quick break. 20 seconds. Okay. Sorry. My mistake. I got 2 questions.
Concert for Legends 6 proudly presents Brad Paisley and Leonard Skinner.
Write it down. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jameer Howardson, joined by Pro Football Hall of Famer Dan Fouts, and we're having an amazing time here on this special edition of the Pro Football Hall of Fame's NFL schedule release. Well, we got a chance to hear Dan really speak on the 2020 NFL Los Angeles Chargers schedule. But now we're going to have some fun and talk about some of the stadiums where he enjoyed playing and calling games. But first, we have some questions from the fans, Dan. Dan, there's one question here. Is there a game that sticks out as one of your favorite to call?
Boy, there's been so many great ones. You remember, I did a lot of college football games too, and worked with the great Keith Jackson. And what is recognized as one of the great college games of all time was the Rose Bowl between USC and Texas. Not only a great game and where Vince Young scored the winning touchdown with about a minute to go in the game, but it was Keith Jackson's last broadcast. And that, to me, will always be a favorite memory.
Awesome. And another question is, if you get a chance to call a Chargers game this year, which game would you want? And how do you avoid becoming a homer or bias when calling games for your former team?
Well, I'd like to do any Charger game. In fact, I'm going to do their Charger preseason games. So that in those preseason games, you can be a homer. So it's easy. But the one thing about the job is that you're going to make a lot of people mad regardless of how you do a game. They're going to be rooting hard for their team. And if they don't think that you're rooting for them as well, then they're going to be haters. And that's okay. That's part of the deal. So you know that going in, and you just don't let it bother you.
My motto, Dan, is let your haters be your motivators.
There you go.
AFC Championship versus Bengals coldest game. Talk about that game.
I don't remember it.
You don't remember it? AFC Championship game versus the Bengals?
It was too cold. It wiped my memory away. I just have no memory at all. And I really don't like that question. I hate that question.
I don't want to rat out the person who sent that question, but I think if we look and we have Jerry go back and look in the files to find out who asked that question, we'll find that out.
You know what? I'll talk about it. We lost to the Bengals, and I just go back to Kenny Anderson in that game. I thought he was fantastic, and the Bengals handled the cold better than we did, and they deserved to win. Yeah, there's no question about that. I threw 2 costly red zone interceptions that I thought when I left my hand were going to be pretty good, but they didn't turn out that way.
We're going to leave that there. All right, let's pull up Dan's graphic and talk about his top 5 places that he liked to play. All right, Dan, there they go. Let's start with number 5, Oakland Coliseum.
Yeah, you might think that that's a strange one for me to answer that way, but the last time I played in the, what do they call it, the black hole or something like that, we beat the Raiders 55 to 21, I think it was, and I threw 6 touchdown passes in that game. And the significant thing about that is we didn't beat them very often in Oakland. And this was the last game that we would play them in Oakland because the next year they were moving to Los Angeles. And so going off the field, we had a lot of fun with the fans that were still hanging around after we put 55 on them.
It's so funny because you have the Oakland Raiders have the black hole, and then your 4th place you enjoyed playing was Cleveland Browns Stadium, Municipal Stadium, and they had the Dog Pound.
The Dog Pound, the mistake on the lake. But as you can see, it used to be a huge baseball stadium.
Yes.
And because of that, look how far the stands are from the sidelines.
Wow.
So as an opposing team, you never felt the fans. And a lot of stadiums in Denver, which is on the list as well, the fans are sitting right on top of you, mile high. So playing in Cleveland Stadium, even if it was packed, which it usually was, especially the Dog Pound, the sense of having fans all over your back just didn't exist. So that made it, for me, I liked it a lot.
Now, I got to ask you, Dan, did you enjoy the locker room? Because as a former ball boy, equipment manager, I remember working in the stadium and with the New York Jets and coming to Cleveland. And I remember we had to clean up and hurry up real quick because players actually had to get dressed in the showers. And then they had it wasn't lockers. You had nails that you had to hook the coach's clothes, take out the coach's clothes out of the bags and put them on these nails as nail hooks.
Well, the lockers were this wide too, because it was a baseball stadium.
Right.
And there were nails there. And you could get dressed in the shower because only 2 of the showers worked at a time. And it was cold water. So it was a horrible experience after the game.
And then number 3, LA Coliseum.
Well, just for the history of the great Coliseum and going back to my college days at the University of Oregon, we trailed the UCLA Bruins. The Bruins played there before they moved to the Rose Bowl. We trailed the Bruins 40-19 with about 4 minutes to go in the game, and we beat them 41-40. So the Coliseum will always be a favorite memory of mine.
And number 1, Lambeau Field.
Yeah, actually, this is
excuse me. I'm sorry. Number 2, Mile High Stadium. I thank you guys. I'm over here slipping. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. But yes, number 2, Mile High Stadium.
And you can see the new stadium in the background, but this is Mile High that no longer exists. In fact,
right.
A couple of the stadiums, a lot of them that I played in don't exist anymore, Jameer. But I like playing in Denver because it's a mile high, literally. That meant the air was thin.
Yes.
And you could throw the ball literally a mile. And so, if you didn't have, real strong arm, you could just flick it. It would go a long way. So that was about the only good thing about playing in Denver, because you could see how close the fans are. Our benches were right up against the wall with fans hanging over the top of us. And some of them weren't real polite.
How did you deal with the air? I mean, did you find yourself like kind of breathing hard? You had to put a little extra, lip chapstick on?
The lack of air there affected our big guys more than anything. And this is the way a game would start. We would win the toss, okay? Denver would kick off. Of course, they'd kick it out of the end zone. We'd take over on the 20 at the time. And if we weren't at midfield in 3 or 4 plays, my big guys up front were gassed. And so their suggestion was either call a timeout or throw an interception. And so I'd call timeout.
And excuse me for before, but number 1, Lambeau Field.
Well, obviously, Lambeau Field has such great history. And the first game I ever played there, and I think I only played there twice because they're an NFC team, it was Alumni Day for the Packers. And they introduced Bart Starr and Fuzzy Thurston and Willie Davis and Willie Wood and Ray Nitschke and Jerry Kramer, all the Hall of Famers, all the great ones. And then they had their jerseys on and they had them seated on the sideline. So you're playing a game and, you're getting sacked or something. You get up and you look over there and there's Bart Starr and Jim Taylor and Paul Hornung. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. So Lambeau Field is always special.
Awesome. All right, well, let's look at your top 5 favorite places to call a game. Starting with number 5, Murph.
Yeah, well, the Murph obviously is San Diego, and calling a game there, it seemed like a lot of times I'd do a game, it would be alumni for us, and the players would be down on the field at halftime, the alums, and I could never get down there because of the broadcast, but they would pan the camera up to the booth, and I would wave like I was Caesar or something. It was, you're sitting up there on top of everything. And the fans would obviously give a nice welcome. But again, a stadium that no longer exists, but will always exist in my memory.
Number 4, MetLife Stadium.
Well, this is simple because I don't know if you can see in the picture, but across from the booth, which is absolutely perfectly situated, is a scoreboard right above the opponent's bench. And so you're never having to search for a scoreboard to find out, information, like score, time left, timeouts left, down and distance. it was always right there. So as a broadcaster, I really love that part of it.
And then number 3 is Candlestick Park.
Yeah, Candlestick Park, you can see it's a football stadium in that picture. But when I first went there, growing up in San Francisco, it was a baseball stadium. Willie Mays played there, Willie McCovey, Orlando Cepeda, Juan Marichal. And I went to a lot of Giants games. And then to be able to be in the booth to call a 49er game was special because my dad, for 20 years, was the voice of the 49ers in San Francisco. So to be able to broadcast literally in his booth, in his shoes, although his booth was Kezar, still the connection with the 49ers was always important to me.
Wow, that's amazing, Dan. That is amazing. And George Veras explained that to us, and he told us the rich history and stories about that. That's absolutely amazing. And number 2 is Giant Stadium.
Well, and for this little bit, same with the reason I picked MetLife is just that the broadcast booth is in the perfect position. The sight lines are the best, and I think we owe John Madden a real debt of gratitude for that, because the Giants at one point wanted to, and they did later build luxury boxes, and they wanted to sell those seats, that booth, to some big donor who was going to pay a lot of money to sit there. But John put his foot down, and it was a big foot, and he preserved that broadcast booth.
And last but not least, number 1, the Rose Bowl.
That says it all. The picture you showed earlier with Keith Jackson and me in the Rose Bowl, it still gives me chills to think about doing Rose Bowl games there and standing next to the great Keith Jackson. The first broadcast I ever did with Keith, I was so in awe and so enthralled by the sound of his voice that I didn't talk for about 4 or 5 plays. And so he looked over at me in commercial and he said, "Well, Fauci, are you going to talk today or are you just going to stand there?" And I said, "I'm sorry, Keith. I'll try to do my best."
That's great. Well, I have to let you know, the Phantom that asked that question, it was our executive producer, Mr. George Veras, who asked the AFC Championship versus Bengals, the coldest game. And he says, "Let Dan know I was on the field. Tell him it was me who sent the question in."
Well, what was he doing on the field? They told people that day, if you have no business being outside, do not go outside. Wind chill factor was minus 59 below. Is that redundant? Minus and below?
Well, not to me, but
That's how cold
it sounds cold. Yeah. But Dan, when you look at this year's schedule, who are some of the, from a quarterback's perspective, who are some of the young quarterbacks that you're looking out for this year?
Well, obviously, it's going to be interesting to see the new draft class. But there's still a couple young quarterbacks like Mahomes and Jackson that and Mayfield that and I'm not sure that Mahomes can improve any more than he has, but there's always room for improvement. And I know that there's things that Jackson wants to do to get better, and Mayfield has got a team now around him that could make some real inroads into the playoffs, and maybe even further. I also want to see how Brady does. How is Brady going to do now that he's 72 years old? It's amazing.
Well, he's going back to New England he's going back to play in New England, and he's playing in Los Angeles for the first time in his career.
Yeah, I think the New England thing is kind of special, and I'm glad that the schedule makers put that together, because that will be an emotional time for Tom and for the fans. And I expect the fans to just come out and salute him and congratulate him on such an unbelievably remarkable career.
Earlier, we got a chance to talk to Ron Wolf, as I mentioned, and one of the questions in our second segment, we talked about Aaron Rodgers. And I know 2 weeks ago, when the NFL draft was underway, it started to buzz and circle around. But we would love to get your perspective of what you think, what Aaron be in a Green Bay Packers uniform, or where do you think he'll go?
Well, he really doesn't have control. The team has control. He may put his wishes out there. Really, the only thing he can do, any player can do, is not show up. And obviously, that would put the Packers in a heck of a bind and perhaps force a trade, which apparently is what Aaron wants. But it's going to be damaging to the team, and it could be damaging to Aaron as well, because going to a new team is not an easy transition, as you might think, especially when you're thinking about systems and players and all those things, and how late that trade might happen. So it could be not a lose-lose situation for both sides, but definitely not the ideal situation.
And week 4, we hope to see, week 4, if everybody stays healthy, we're going to see the battle of the young cats. Joe Burrows coming back from the first round draft pick of last year, and this year's first round draft pick, Trevor Lawrence. They're going to play the Cincinnati Bengals and the Jacksonville Jaguars week 4. How excited you see these two young Thundercats, if you will, the future of your league play?
Yeah, you got to worry about the injury from last year. So, and how he comes back from that. It sounded like it was a pretty devastating knee injury. Yeah. And then for a rookie quarterback, there's so much to learn. And it's just not football. It's about life in general. How you handle life as an NFL quarterback. How do you budget your time? How do you prepare for each game? And 17 games. Okay, yeah. There's a challenge. And the other thing is, for both these quarterbacks, they're going to have to play in the preseason. Burrows missed over half the season last year. And of course, Lawrence is going to have to get up to speed as quickly as possible. So those 3 preseason games are going to be important for those quarterbacks and all the rookie quarterbacks, really.
Before we let you go, I didn't get a chance to, bring this up, and I would be remiss that, you look at this year, there will be fans. It'll be a packed stadium. Could you imagine playing last year under those conditions and not having any fans in a stadium, Dan?
No, that really was a challenge and very difficult for the players. But, once the ball is put on the tee and it's kicked and the other team returns it, you start playing. I don't think very many players, even if a packed stadium is there, are thinking about that. There's this much distance on the line of scrimmage between the good guys and the bad guys. Okay, the offense and the defense. And for my mind, that's all I could think about. Is I hope that my 10 guys and myself are as good or better than the 11 that far away.
Wow. Well, Dan, we appreciate you so much for joining us here live for this special mission. And we can't wait to see you and your family here in Canton, Ohio for Twice the Fun in 21. We're going to celebrate the class of 2020 and celebrate this year's class of 2021. Dan, thank you for joining us.
It was a real pleasure. Can't wait for Hall of Fame weekend.
Dan Fouts, ladies and gentlemen, joining us right here on The Mission.
Hey, I think that's a knock you've been waiting for. I want to thank you on behalf of all those who love the game.
Thank you for all you've done for the game.
I want to welcome you to Canton, Ohio, where for the rest of the time, we want to guard your legacy and thank you for all you've done for this great game.
Twice the Fun in 21, the Centennial Class of 2020 with 20 new Hall of Famers, and now the Class of 2021, one of the greatest ever. Peyton Manning, Charles Woodson, Calvin Johnson, Alan Faneca, John Lynch, Tom Flores, Bill Nunn, and Drew Pearson. Enshrinement tickets are on sale March 5th at profootballhof.com/tickets. You're coming to Canton, and guess what? They are too.
I'll see you in Canton with the class of 2021. I'll see you in Canton for twice the fun in 21.
See you in Canton for twice the fun in 21.
This is a presentation of the Pro Football Hall of Fame.